number off in your group 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do that right now. Who's 1?
Oh, sorry. What was it?
1, 2, 3.
Okay. The number 1s, I want you to read the first 2 pages and pull out what you think is the most important concept in those first 2 pages. Number 2, you got pages 3 and 4. 3s have 5 and 6. 4s have 7 and 8. Okay? I want to give you about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Look through that article very quickly. A lot of it reinforces what we talked about last week, and it's a good starting point for us to pick up and take a look at Classroom Management Part 2 today. Has everybody had a chance to look at their 2 pages? Okay, why don't you take a few minutes at your table, share with each other what your major concepts were out of that article. Go ahead.
Making sure they're deeply involved in their work, making sure there's not too much unused time. They know what's expected of them, and the climate of the work is work-oriented, but also engaging and fun. Then the second page just starts talking about the first days of school and how you establish the classroom rules and procedures automatically and stick to them.
Page 3 was about an example of an introduction of what you might say to students. And so kind of the main things is that it should be simple and positive, and you should make your students feel welcome and also communicate your positive expectations. And then he actually has an example of what he would say to start the first day of school. And then it also talks about continuing the year as an effective teacher. And talks about starting the class by giving an assignment and not taking it home. Posting your assignments in the same place every day. And about presenting your rules clearly.
Good.
I read it on procedures, and every time the teacher wants something done, they have to math for it, and that helps them manage the class well. Almost all teachers need to have one for the beginning of the class, assignments, quieting students, the end of the day, and then seeking help or absence. And you have to be really intentional about teaching these things instead of just assuming that they know it. Assignments or jobs. Just begin the example. So you should explain it, rehearse it, and reinforce it.
What are we on, number 2?
Show how you done.
Oh, you're all done?
We chatted about it.
You chatted?
We started before you told us to start.
What's the major idea in number 1? First 2 pages.
Management so engaging, paperwork for transitions got out. It's just listening time, ordering time, engaging students, how you set up the classroom is also a lot of it.
Okay, good. What about number 4?
Revising and honing your procedures each year until you get them good.
Do what?
Revise and hone them, keep making them better until you get ones that work for you in your class.
Oh, it's not okay just to pull it out of the file cabinet every year and go with it?
No,
Okay,
you can try
good.
that, but
Thank
it
you.
probably won't work.
Thank you. God bless you, son. Good, good. Lord knows we've had too many of those teachers that do that, so we've all had those. Good, good. Have we had a chance to debrief? Okay, let's start with this table. What was the number 1 concept you came up with out of over the first 2 pages? Give me a number 1. Give me a number 1.
I would say the number one thing I thought, I had the first 2 pages, and I thought the number one thing was to start teaching procedures and routines on the first day of school right
Okay.
away.
Does it have to be drill and kill? No. Can it be fun? Yes. Absolutely. Elementary is not as tough of an environment as the secondary is, but think about what we have done to our students at the secondary level. They go to period 1, they get drill and kill. Okay? They go to period 2, what do they get? Drill and kill. They go to period 3, drill and kill. By the end of the day, they're exhausted. Okay? They've got so many rules thrown at them. So, it's important to know, 1, what level you're at, 2, what your students can handle, and 3, figure out ways to make it enjoyable while getting across those important procedures and routines. So it doesn't have to be dull, boring, and lifeless. It needs to be exciting. Those kids need to walk away that first day of school feeling like, okay, it's okay that summer's over. I'm excited that school's ready to begin. And if you can't do that, then you've lost some of your students. Number 2, let's go to this table. What was an important characteristic?
I thought that an important characteristic was to start your year off with like a simple and positive introduction to yourself so that the students feel welcome if they want to be in your class.
Start that relationship piece right away. Let them know who you are and that they can be comfortable in the classroom. That will go a long way. Excellent, excellent. Number 3's over here.
It talks about how to set up procedures for the beginning of the day, and then for absent students, like assigning other students the role of filling in the student who is absent rather than the teacher having to go over it 4 different times.
How many of you have already been exposed to high absenteeism in your classrooms among certain students? That's going to be an issue, and you're going to have to set up procedures and guidelines because it's our responsibility to bring those kids back into the fold. And some of those students can be gone 2, 3, 4, 5 days. And you don't know where they're at. You can't get a hold of the parents. And that makes it difficult. But when that child comes back to class, it's going to be very, very important that you have procedures in place to try to get them caught up. Figure out who can help you do that, because oftentimes it cannot be done alone. Number 4's. Let's go to this table.
It was probably the reinforcement. So you let them practice it, and then you reinforce it by saying, "I like the way that you were, reading quietly," or something like that, to let them know that they're doing it right.
Good, good. All right, put this article someplace where you can access it down the road, because these are things that you need to review over and over again as you get into your own classroom. Okay, we're going to take a look, and we're going to spend today talking about some more information regarding classroom management. We're taking two seminar sessions, so I hope you are beginning to understand how critical and how important classroom management is to the overall process of teaching and learning. Last week's discussion. If you'll remember our discussions last week, we focused on the topics that you see up here. We took a quick look at what we thought, and you helped define what you thought the ideal teacher was. We started, if you'll remember, by taking a look back in our own past about that teacher that had an impact on us, and a teacher that positively impacted us, and a teacher that maybe negatively impacted us, and what were some of those characteristics. We took a look at the importance of that student-teacher relationship and how critical that piece is. Remember what our discussion last week focused on: rigor, relevance, and relationships, and what did we decide? Or what did I decide for you? We have it backwards. Okay? Relationships are what I think are the key. If you can establish good, solid relationships with your students, you're going to go a long way in that learning piece. We talked about professionalism. We talked about what effective instruction will do for classroom management. And we talked about time management and how important it is to be that bell-to-bell teacher, that there is no really downtime, and that all of your time, whether it's academic time or whether it's recess time or whether it's downtime, it has to be structured. And we have to make sure that we understand that time management piece. And then we finished our class by taking a look at how important beginning the class was, how important transitioning is on kids, and how important the end of the class is. And if you'll remember, my comment to you last week was sometimes or oftentimes we do a really good job beginning the classroom. We do a really good job in transitions, but we forget about that end of the class or that end of the day. And we kind of let that lapse, and that's when behaviors begin to set in and we begin to have some problems. I want to take a few minutes. I want you to think about questions that you might have for me regarding classroom management. Maybe things that have popped up, maybe things that you have been thinking about between seminar last week and this week. Questions that you might have about what is going on in your own classroom. Are there any what I call haunting questions that you have regarding classroom management? So, Stephanie.
Well, I should look it up, but in the article somewhere it says something about rewards and punishments. I didn't know what you thought about that. If like good behavior should just be the expectation, or if you use rewards and punishments.
Well, what do you guys think about rewards and punishments? Is there a place for both in a classroom? Yes, no?
I don't like the word punishment. I would more say consequence.
Okay. All right. Consequence is a little softer. Okay. Still a punishment.
I know, but that's like a punishment is what you give like a
Yeah.
kid that, like your daughter or your son,
Okay.
like your own child.
Okay. Good point. Good point. Is there room for both in a classroom? Yes. Is there a need for both in a classroom? Yes. Absolutely. All right. You need to have a system of rewards and you need to have a system of consequences. All right. And you need to hold firm and you need to be consistent. The more consistent you are in handing those out, whether it's on the positive or the negative side, the better off you're going to be, and the kids will grasp a better understanding as to what those rules and regulations are, and in fact, that you are going to enforce them. All right? But when push comes to shove, what should you lean towards? Rewards or consequences? Rewards. All right? Be careful doling out consequences. All right? It's important to do that, and it's important to be consistent, but kids will gravitate towards wanting to be rewarded if you have a good reward type system. All people want to be rewarded. All people want to be patted on the back. All people want to be congratulated. Very few of us can't wait till we get criticized. All right? So know that it's important, but have that good, strong reward system so that the entire class can see that you're noticing really good academic work or academic behavior, good social behavior, or whatever. Okay? Good question. Good comments. Any other questions before we get started? Okay, if you'll remember, I'm going to ask you to complete an action plan, and this will be due next week. This will replace your reflection. And you have now been hired into the Mountain Ridge School District. You start classes next week. So it's going to be very, very important that you map out the first 2 weeks of your class. Now, included in your thinking, but I want to make it clear that I'm not limiting you to the following characteristics. So if something is not up there that you think is important, put it in your plan. And the only other thing that I want to emphasize is that I want this to be a living document. I want it to be something that you will use, not something that you will put in a file and never take a look at. So I want it to be a working document. I want it to be a work in progress. Because as I mentioned last week, some of you will actually be assuming teaching positions in some form or another come January. My hope is that all of you get hired, snapped up by school districts, and you're off and running. So if that's the case, then you need to be ready and you need to be prepared. Second thing that I think I emphasized last seminar was the fact that if you show that you are prepared in an interview for the first days of school, that goes a long way in enhancing your status as a prospective applicant for a specific teaching job. If you have no clue what you're going to be doing the first 2 weeks, that'll bode as well. Not very well, but you're probably not going to get the job that you're seeking if you walk into that interview unprepared. So I'm going to ask that it be completed, turned in next week in replace of your reflective piece. Any questions on the assignment?
What length do you want it, or what format?
Doesn't matter. All I'm saying is I want it to be a workable document. Do I need it to be wordy? No. Okay? I don't want a book. Okay? I don't want a biography about classroom management. I want an action plan. Action plans tend to be very brief in characteristics. All right? If you're explaining classroom rules, I don't need a paragraph on each rule. I just need to know what the rule is and maybe why. Very quickly. That can be done in short bursts. Again, I want it to be workable. I want it to be easily accessed. I would, if I were creating an action plan, I would probably bold certain things that I thought were critical in my action plan. That way it stands out, so that when I review my action plan every semester, boom, I know that I need to cover this, this, and this. And I would have this accessible when I'm starting the class, so that I know what needs to be built into my lesson design as we start the first 2 weeks of school. Any other questions? Good question. Everybody understands the assignment? Whoop. Okay, at your table, I want somebody to be the scribe. So decide who that's going to be right now. Who's going to be the secretary? If you're the secretary, raise your hand. Okay. We got two secretaries, three. Who's the secretary over here? Secretary over here. Okay. You are developing a David Letterman's top 10 list. Here's the category. Here's the category. What does an effective teacher's classroom look like? What does an effective teacher's classroom look like? Top 10. Top 10. Ready? Go. Good ones.
Just sound it out, phonics.
F-O-U-N-G.
What is feng shui? What is that?
It's like it's like a way of decorating that's like very comfortable. So like you only decorate some like odd numbers. So if you have like you don't have like 4 flower pots in them somewhere, you have like 3 or 5 because it's more inviting for you. It appeals to people better. It's like a Japanese architecture type of deal.
Serious?
Ever heard of it?
Oh,
Yeah, it's real.
really?
Like they'll have like waterfalls a lot of times because it's real calming and stuff like that. And green plants because it's feel more involved.
Oh, so it doesn't have anything to do with number of.
Well, when you decorate, you want to do things in odd numbers because that makes it feel more comfortable and it looks better. So if you have like one center and then you got like 2 or 3 on each side, but you have an odd number, always you draw like one center.
Okay. Makes sense.
It's just like an inviting way to decorate.
Yeah. Cool. Where are we at? Do we have 10? You guys have 10? Do you guys have 10? 10? 9? Got to have 10. 10? Okay, you guys have 10? Got caught up on feng shui. Yeah, yeah.
Did you say you would email us this PowerPoint too? Or
Yes,
share it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I added from last week to this week, so I wanted to make sure you got the complete one. So
Okay.
I'll send it tonight. While you're finishing up, Stephanie asked a really good question. I will be sending this PowerPoint to you tonight so that you can use it to review in the development of your action plan. So some of the things we talk about in seminar, you'll have access to through the PowerPoint. So I will get that sent to you. Okay, here's what I want to do real quick. I want you to see where you match up. I want to introduce another resource for you. And again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of you starting a resource library of some type. You need to have access to information quickly so that you can develop different aspects of your teaching. Classroom management is just one. Okay, but I will tell you, one of my favorite authors is Todd Whitaker. Todd Whitaker is a noted educational expert out in the field regarding a lot of different subjects, but he is a master at classroom management and instructional practice and what kids need in the classroom and what teachers need to be doing as 21st century educators. So the book is entitled 7 Simple Secrets. Ann Bro co-authored with Todd on this book. And it's in the subtitle is What the Best Teachers Know and Do. And it really gives you some very simple insight, concrete ideas and information about what some of our better educators are doing out there in the field so that you can emulate them. The very best teachers, are thieves. I will tell you that, okay? We are thieves, okay? We steal from everywhere, okay? If it's a good idea, I'm going to take it and I'm going to run with it. And so things that you get from these kind of resources, things that you get from this PowerPoint, things that you get from these books by Harry Wong and some of the other authors, they're there for you to implement into your classroom instruction so that you can become a more comfortable educational leader. Because the more comfortable you are in the classroom, who benefits? Are you the only one that benefits? Who benefits?
Students.
The kids do. All right? And if we are here for the kids, then we want to do everything we can to improve our practice. You can't do that in isolation. You can't do that by guessing. And I certainly don't want you to do that because here's how I was taught, therefore this is how I'm going to teach. That has to end. We can no longer teach the way we were taught. And if that's the case, then we need to make sure that we are looking at best practice methodology. So I'm going to be bringing these books in, and I'm going to keep bringing different resources in. When we start taking a look at lesson design, I'm going to bring in some resources for you to take a look at. Feel free to peruse through these, jot down. All of this is on the internet. You can get easy access on Amazon, any place. They're fairly cheap. You can get them used now on Amazon where they're not extremely costly. But some way, somehow, you need to start developing some kind of a resource library. In the book, let's take a look at how well you matched up with what Annette and Todd Whitaker are talking about. Here's what they say an effective teacher's classroom looks like. Okay? First of all, it's got to be organized. Disorganization. You got to understand, and I heard some of you talking amongst yourselves. Remember, does one size fit all in a classroom? No. Are all kids the same? No. Do you have some kids that are high achieving? Do you have some kids that are low achieving? Do you have some kids with ADD? Do you have some kids on an IEP? Okay? So you have to be cognizant of that diversity in the classroom, and you have to organize yourself for that diversity. And so that classroom needs to look and feel organized to all your kids. You know, I heard, and we'll talk probably in a little bit, I heard some conversation, I think over here, about walking into some classrooms and it's just, it's overload. You know, the walls are just covered with a million different things. And if you're an ADD student, can that be overwhelming to you? Absolutely. Absolutely. Will you be comfortable in that environment? Probably not. Okay? So you need to be cognizant of those kinds of things. Lessons were filled with active learning sequences. What we mean by that is very little time is spent in long periods of time sitting, doing very little. You have to actively engage the kids. The more engaged students are, the less management problems you'll have. I'm convinced of that. And the experts tell us that too. Students did most of the doing. Teacher is the facilitator. All right? In my next series rounds of observation, I'm really getting excited because I'm starting to see a lot of you as facilitators to learning. You've got the kids doing different things, and they're working in groups, and you're monitoring that progress, and you're pulling certain kids aside and having some conversations. Maybe it's pertaining to reading or whatever. Maybe it's working with a student one-on-one while several other groups are working on other things so that you can get to that student that is struggling in a math lesson, for an example. So teachers today are facilitators to learning. They're not the people in front of the students all the time. Routines and procedures were evident, no surprises. Students should never be surprised on routines or procedures. All right? Because if they become surprised, they will become defiant. When they become defiant, they will fight you. All right? Nobody likes to be backed into a corner. Don't do it. Okay? Because if I back you into a corner, what are you going to do? You're going to fight your way out. One way or another, you're going to fight your way out. Either verbally or physically, you're going to come back. All right? That's a natural phenomenon. So don't put kids into that corner. Make sure that they fully understand the rules and the procedures. And if you do, then you're going to be okay. No teacher warnings. This I found interesting. No teacher warnings. If a rule is broken, consequences. Don't be warning a kid over and over and over again. Johnny, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to do... No. If Johnny knows the rule and he broke the rule, consequence him. Now, you don't have to be a mean teacher to do it, but that student needs to be consequenced, okay? Because that will affect the other class members as well. Teachers are proactive versus reactive. We talked about that last week. Lesson plans, well written, okay? Lesson plans that are up here, not good enough, okay? They need to be written, all right? Objective of the lesson, clearly defined for students. Students should know where you're taking them. And that should be a preface to every lesson. You should outline for the kids where you're going to be taking them. Okay? You'll lose less kids along the way. So make sure that objective is clear defined, and then constant teacher movement around the room. Remember last week we talked about close proximity. You need to make sure that you're in close proximity of all the kids at one point or another. Now, I will tell you that during some of my observations lately, I've started to notice, and this is a typical phenomenon, okay, that sometimes you tend to pick out those 4 or 5 kids in a class and you hang your hat on those kids. Okay, those are the kids that you like to call on in class. Well, if I start doing that on a regular basis, what happens? Somebody tell me what happens.
The rest don't answer.
The rest don't answer, and the rest, what else?
They don't think, they don't need to.
They start shutting down. And when kids start to shut down, do behaviors start to escalate? Yes. All right? So you've got to make every effort to make sure that every student in the classroom is engaged with you. All right? If you'll remember the strategy that Dr. Countryman talked to us about, eye contact. How powerful is eye contact? How many people have tried that? Eye contact with your kids. Tell me about it. Does it work? Not work?
With students that keep falling off and daydreaming, if I keep eye contact and I keep turning back to give them everyone eye contact
Yeah.
the best I can. When I look back, I can move their clip up or I give them a little
Yep.
something that their eyes are on me.
Powerful, powerful strategy. So if you haven't tried it, try it in the next couple of days. Okay? Little dependence on worksheet and independent textbook activities. Lessons inviting and exciting, and students remained actively engaged in meaningful learning. We have got to move away from worksheets. And I don't care what level we're talking about. We are boring the heck out of kids. And kids, because they are wired differently today, we have got to find ways to re-engage them into hands-on type of activities. All right? Kids will rebel if you worksheet them to death. All right? So please take a look at your own practice. And I'm not saying that there's not places sometimes for worksheets, but if you're doing worksheets every day, there's a problem. There's a problem. All right? I'd much rather see you getting those kids on the computer doing some stuff, because that's where we're headed with technology. The punishment for any given infraction was consistent. Consistency is a key, very important. And the teacher almost never openly showed frustration. This is an important one. How many people had talked about on their top 10 about frustration level? Who has to be the adult in the classroom? You do. All right? How easy is it to get mad at kids? Have you found it pretty easy? Yeah, it's really easy. All right? But you cannot. Here's what I tell kids. Here's what I used to tell my staff. And here's how I try to live my life. I will never stoop to somebody else's level. I will never stoop to somebody else's level. Now, does that mean I don't ever stoop to somebody else's level? No, I've stooped, okay? But I try to work at it. So when I'm in some kind of a confrontational situation that could possibly escalate, I have to be thinking consciously of being the adult in the situation. I mean, I've even had conversations with parents. There's a big discrepancy, okay? The parents are wallowing down here, and they're trying to bring you right down with them and have that conversation that's not going to go anywhere. Can't do that, okay? You've got to consciously think about, how can I keep myself at a professional level and keep calm? The calmer you can be, the better off you're going to be able to, and have a better chance at resolving the situation. All right? Because here's what can happen. Okay? Conversation starts out, whether it's with a student or with a parent. Okay? It escalates, but you've got to figure out how to de-escalate it. That's your role as an educator. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking to a student or whether you're talking to a parent, whether you're talking to an administrator, whoever. You've got to figure out, you've got to be the de-escalator to that issue. Because what you want is, if it's with a student, you want to be able to get that student back on track as soon as possible. You can't do that if you're not willing to de-escalate. If it's a conversation, tough conversation with a parent, you've got to make sure that they're walking out of their office, your office or your classroom, feeling like they were supported. Like you really care about their son or daughter, so that they can partner with you. Now, you may not agree with them, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you need to make sure that they feel like they're a partner in their son or daughter's educational process. All right? So in order to do that, you have to be the adult. All right? You have to really work not to show that frustration that oftentimes creeps in. Okay? And the last thing, you have to be in control. Right? The teacher has to be in control. One of the things I always asked on the first day of class, when I was in the classroom, I used to ask my students, who has to be in control of this class? And of course their natural response was, well, you do. Well, why is that? Well, Mr. Weaton, if you lose control, then it's going to be chaos in here, and we may like it for a while, but it's just not going to work. You got it. Okay? We can't create a chaotic environment if you expect kids to learn. Stephanie.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm glad you worded it like that, because I don't really get mad that easily, but if I get frustrated, then I just kind of like take it on myself, like, gosh, I can't teach very well. Or like, then I act like I'm not in control, but if I just keep going, like, all right, we'll go on, then it works a lot better.
Yep. And there are going to be days, there are going to be moments that you're going to have to push through. Okay? And it's important that you show the kids that you're willing to push through, because what are we asking the kids to do? When they don't understand some concepts, are we asking them to push through? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right? So we're all in this together, and if you get the kids to buy into that philosophy, if you buy into that philosophy, it becomes a super enjoyable classroom experience for everybody. Okay? Now, how many of those descriptors did you have in your descriptors? Go back real quick, look at all your 10, circle the ones that were similar to ones Todd Whitaker talked about in his book. Okay, here's the second set of characteristics. Okay. How close were you? 6? How many did you guys have? 5. 4 or 5? 4 and a half?
Yep.
Okay. 4 or 5. How many did you guys have? I know you didn't have all 10 because they didn't talk about.
He was missing a couple up there.
Okay. All right. How many?
We had 7 or 8. We
7
did
or 8.
similar ones,
Okay.
though.
Okay. The point is, how important is that classroom? It's critical. Okay? It's critical. Now, here's what I want you to do, or here's what we're going to do. All right? First of all, I want absolutely no talking. I want absolutely no talking. We are going to take a walking tour of some classrooms here in this building. I want you to walk into the classroom, and I want you to look around. I don't want you to say a word. I want you to take some mental notes. If you want to take a piece of scratch paper and jot some things down, you're welcome to do that, but you cannot talk to another colleague. And then we're going to come back here and we're going to talk briefly about what you saw and what you think were good classrooms and why, and what are some bad classrooms and why. Got the assignment? I'm the only one that gets to talk, okay? I love it. All right, let's go. Okay, let's go to another one. Okay, who was talking? Because I need to consequence you right now.
Possibly me.
Okay, you can talk now. Okay? Okay, I tried to show you three a little bit different rooms. Okay, you should have seen some differences in all three of the rooms. So let's just open it up. What did you notice in let's go to classroom number 1 that we showed you right down here. What were some things that you noticed? Good, bad, otherwise. Things that maybe you liked, things that maybe you didn't like.
And it was just really boring.
Okay, really boring. Okay. Agree, disagree? Kind of? Kind of? Okay, a little boring. Okay.
I feel like the shelves in the back were so jumbled. I feel like I'd be trying to figure out what's in there, or if one of my students, I feel like they're gonna want to get up there and go through it.
So you question maybe the organization of the classroom? Okay, all right. Any other comments?
On
Karen?
the whiteboard, when you first came in, it had the expectations for the day. I think there were 4 things, and ended with an exit slip. So the expectations for the day were clear.
Okay, all right. So they had it written on the board, which is good. So the kids shouldn't have been confused. Good.
I like that up on the board they had the objectives. So like by the end of this class, you'll know, and it had like all the things listed, so they know what they were learning.
Yeah, if the Iowa core is as important as we say it is, should we be referencing the Iowa core on a consistent basis? Yeah, kids need to get comfortable with it too, so that they know where they're headed. Okay, anything else about classroom number 1? What'd you notice about the desks? Anything?
They were in rows, and I don't know, rows aren't like my favorite thing for classroom arrangement. I would rather have them be like in groups or like at just a table like this.
Okay, if you had the ability, and some of you will, to decide whether you want desks or tables, how many of you want desks? How many of you want tables? Good, good. Move in that direction, all right? Move away from desks, all right? Because desks create the potential, not necessarily all the time, but create the potential for a traditional classroom setting. Are we in a traditional period of teaching and learning right now? No. We need to move away from that. We need to get kids talking to each other. We need collaboration. We need teamwork. We need project-based type of instruction. Those are the new strategies to engage kids. So create a classroom environment that's that way. Now, if you're stuck with desks, there are a lot of things I can do with desks, okay, to create that type of an environment, but take it upon yourself to create that type of an environment. Okay, classroom 2, what'd you notice? Classroom 2.
The student work was put up on the walls.
Yeah, how powerful is that? Very powerful. Publish student work. However you do it is up to you, but make sure that the kids know that you're going to publish their work in one way or another. All right? One of the things that we were very proud of when we launched project-based instruction at Muscatine High School is that our kids actually formally published work. Okay? The book was called Dirt, and it was a project based on environmental study and those kinds of things. And we actually published it, and so our kids can now, on a resume, say that they are published authors, because they are. Okay, and they're not lying. All right? How powerful is that? That's pretty powerful. Putting work on walls, extremely powerful, because it allows other kids to visibly see my work. All right? Huge. Yeah, I noticed that right off the bat. I'm glad you guys did too. Any other things about Classroom 2?
I noticed that they had their goals posted on the little circles behind the desk. And there was a wide range of, it looked like whatever their child chose as a goal was what they wrote down. And it wasn't directed by the teacher or anything.
Yeah, and maybe we can assume that they revisit those goals periodically. Yeah. Very good. Anything else about Classroom 2? Classroom 3 was a science classroom. What'd you notice?
I like the U shape of and the desks. or in the tables, how they're U-shaped, so I'm sure the teacher can walk up and down the middle and be right in front of the students pretty much at all times.
Close proximity. Do you think kids would be able to collaborate together?
Yep.
Would there be chances that they could break off and have individual discussions? Probably. Okay. Anything else about Classroom 3?
It looked really unorganized.
Looked unorganized. How so?
Well, I guess it was just his desk, or her desk, but
There's paper everywhere, old food on the table.
Okay. Okay.
First thing I saw was the apple when I walked in.
Okay. Was there a bite in the apple, or?
It was like it was brown. It was just sitting there.
That's probably not good. That's not good. Okay. Brianna.
Well, I noticed in the back, I don't know if it's just a space that they don't use that often, but there was a TV blocking off where all the computers were. So I don't know if that's just where he or she stores it, or if that's kind of off limits, but it's not really taking good use of the space of your classroom.
Well, it definitely sends a message of some kind, doesn't it? Yeah. That maybe students are allowed in certain sections of a classroom versus all of the classroom. You just don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was interesting too, going off of that, the fire exit was at the back, was in the back with all the instructions, and I just kept thinking about, well, how did they get out? Because everything was blocking their
Yeah.
fire exit.
So we probably should call the fire marshal. No. Yeah, very, very good observations from all of you. All right. It's very important. Classroom design is more important than a lot of people give it credit for. Okay. How you design your classroom is going to be very, very important, and it will show what type of teacher that you are. It will show what you believe in. If you say that your classroom needs to be organized, should that classroom show that organization? Absolutely. All right? So don't be afraid that in the last weeks of your student teaching experience, in both the first and the second placements, take some time just to walk through other classrooms. Get ideas for what you think is really good idea on classroom design. Take some notes on what maybe you don't think is quite so good that maybe I'll shy away from or whatever. But get a feel for multiple type classrooms as you get into designing your classroom, because that will help you the first weeks of an experience. Okay? Any questions? I think it's critical. When I walk into a classroom, if I'm an evaluator, the first thing I do when I walk into a classroom is I walk the walls. Okay, I want to see what's on the walls. The other thing that I neglected to tell you is be careful that the walls represent what you want to teach the kids. Okay? If I'm a United States history teacher, should I just have United States history stuff on there? No. If I believe in character education, should I have some things about character ed sprinkled in? Yeah. Whatever you want to teach the kids, whatever you want them to be when they leave your classroom, should be represented in some shape or form on your walls, in your classroom, in the design. Okay? All right. I want to take about a 5-minute stretch break. If you need to go to the restrooms, please use the restrooms at this time. If you need to get a drink, get a drink. But let's do, at the very least, stand up, stretch, and then we're going to work into discipline in the classroom.